Hello and welcome back to Lab 52, a Dynasty Football podcast. I'm one of your hosts, the Tecmo Weave, joined by my co-host Weapon X. On today's show, we're going to be covering a 12-team Superflex PPR um, mock draft that we did this weekend. And that was done with a collection of real players, not just Weapon X and myself, along with some CPUs. And we did it on Fantasy Pros. And not just because we use the site, but I still really feel like they're one of the best, if not the best, fantasy football site that's out there when it comes to mock drafting or draft assistance, um, fantasy information. There's a lot of fun and interesting tools they have available, and being able to schedule your own mock draft is one of them. How did you feel about the mock draft? It was easy to set up, and it went really smoothly.
Yeah, I agree. I think what's really good about Fantasy Pros is if you can't get full 12 people to do a draft, I mean that's not easy to do sometimes. The computer that does draft, I think they're probably as good as it gets as far as having a draft that's not all 12 users. I think the consensus rankings that it goes by and the settings that you choose, it is going to draft based on those settings, and it's going to make common sense picks. We already went through a sleeper draft a couple months ago, and it wasn't common sense. Josh Allen was picked in the end of the second round, so obviously that's not a true super flex, evaluation. So yeah, I think Fantasy Pros is really good. I definitely recommend that for anyone who is getting ready for draft season right now. You can do drafts quick too. If you're just going to go on there yourself and you just want to do a quick draft, you can probably finish a draft in a couple minutes. Or if you want to join with other people, that's also a cool way to do it too. But yeah, Fantasy Pros definitely with the consensus rankings and the way they have the settings and everything, I think it's a good site to use.
Yeah, you definitely won't see any computer controlled teams in a super flex coming out with only one quarterback,
Yeah, exactly.
which
Yeah.
we saw multiple teams on Sleeper. So sometimes paying a few extra dollars, it's worth it. I think that's maybe a good lesson for life. Sometimes paying the couple extra bucks to go first class if you can, it's worth your investment. Well, as we said, today's the we're gonna do a redraft coverage of this mock draft we did, and just kind of see where players are going. And you had mentioned Weapon X that you approached it with your general mindset. You're gonna fade quarterback a little bit. You're gonna secure the wide receiver, running back position. Um, and that was kind of my attitude with it as well. Um, and you came out, I know, on the start of the team rankings. You came out number one. Yeah, and I would imagine you felt really good about that.
Nah, we were just talking before the show. I mean, if I got a 95 or a 55, at the end of the day, you're practicing here. You're doing your strategies, and you're just trying to prepare in a way that you would prepare for a real draft. That's what these are for. Yeah, it's cool to get a good score, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter, man. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Well, we're gonna alternate rounds. I'm gonna start with round one. Uh, and Josh Allen went 1-1. I've said before, I don't really feel like that's justified, but the computer in most drafts I see, he still goes 1-1. Most people do not agree with me on that. So the computer in this case picked the right player. At number two, that was a person, an actual user controlled pick, and he picked Lamar Jackson. And I tend to think this will be the one thing I want to talk about in this round. Um, the likelihood that Lamar rebounds to anything close to this value. Because Lamar won at 1-2. Three was Drake May. Four was Jane Daniels. That seems a little high. You picked Jamar Chase at 5. Jameer Gibbs went at 6. I took Bijan at 7. I was ecstatic about that. I said, I can't believe Bijan fell to number 7. Joe Burrow at 8. Jalen Hurts seemed a little bit early at 9. Caleb Williams at 10, a little bit late for him. Here was the computer throwing in a curveball. Dak Prescott, even in redraft, that seems a little bit ridiculous. At number 11, but I guess it is a super flex, and But yeah, that would be tough for me to justify, but they clearly prioritize quarterback strength on Fantasy Pros. And number 12, quite a value, you got Puka Nakua. Um, but yeah, coming back to Lamar Jackson at 1-2, this is maybe something we would have seen a couple years ago, when he was lighting up the league and he offered all that rushing upside. And now it's a question of, well, okay, your head coach is gone and you're about 30, and have you lost a step? Um, I mean, I don't think there's really any way to know. I don't think he justifies getting picked at the 1-2. But can he rebound? I would imagine if anybody can, it's a guy that's been a NFL MVP twice. This isn't just somebody we saw a flash from and he got injured and you're hoping he gets back to where he was before. But eventually that rushing upside dries up. Thoughts on Lamar kind of rebounding or recovering some of his value to be a top 6 quarterback this year?
Yeah, I feel pretty good about his opportunity to rebound this year. And when you see him go number two, obviously that's higher than most people would take him, but he is one of those players who you could see finishing number one overall in fantasy. So if you pick a number two, and obviously you're drafting him at the absolute ceiling he could possibly be at, but if he plays the way we've seen him play, he stays healthy. The offense looks good, with the new coaching staff. I think you're going to see a guy that's going to absolutely rebound and play well. So obviously a first round quarterback, no question about it. Would I take him second overall? I probably wouldn't take him second overall, but he's a first round quarterback, and I think he could return value in that first round if he can play, the way we know he could play, because he can finish number one. There's no question.
Well, certainly if the computer's thinking Dak Prescott's a round 1 quarterback in redraft, then I would certainly say Lamar qualifies as well. Alright. Well, why don't you, start off round 2?
Yes, round two went Jonathan Taylor, JSN, Christian McCaffrey, and then we had two quarterbacks here with Matthew Stafford and Justin Herbert. And then a great value there with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, and then another quarterback with Trevor Lawrence. And then the round here finishes off with three quarterbacks: Brock Purdy, Jackson Dart, and Bo Nix. First glance here, I see another round with a ton of quarterbacks. So obviously they're flying off the board. But tremendous value, as I mentioned, Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's really good value for a we're redraft right now, so we're not worried about age, none of that stuff. He's a first round pick even in dynasty drafts, in a lot of drafts I've seen. So getting him there in the middle, that was your pick there. Getting him there in the middle of the second round, that's about as good a value as you're going to get. JSN, Jonathan Taylor, those are other good values as well. Christian McCaffrey. There's a lot of good values in this draft for the positional non-quarterback players, in my opinion.
Definitely, definitely. Anything more that you'd wanna comment on round 2, or you
Yeah,
certainly don't have to, I just wanna make sure you've said all you gotta say.
yeah, I would say. What do you think about these quarterbacks? I feel like they're good players. They really are. But I think these quarterbacks, especially towards the end here, Purdy, Dart, Bo Nix, I think those are more round three, maybe later round three picks in a redraft. What do you think? I feel like there could have been better players chosen in those spots.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, collectively here, they took 14 quarterbacks in the first 24 picks. When I picked Amon-Ra St. Brown and then another 4 quarterbacks went off the board, at that point, I said, "Well, okay, I'm not even gonna get a Trevor Lawrence or a Brock Purdy." I'm not I so I shifted gears at that point. Um, and yeah, so could they have picked somebody better? Certainly. I mean, who goes in round 3 here? Janty, Omarion Hampton, um, Bowers, Drake London. I would be shooting for those players. Um, certainly, I mean, over like a Dak Prescott. Um, but that's how the program is running it, and I can't fault the wide receivers they pick for this round. JSN, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson, and CeeDee Lamb. It just seems a little bit too QB heavy. But those are all QBs You know, you got Matthew Stafford, the MVP, Justin Herbert, Mike McDaniels. We're all excited. Trevor Lawrence, has he finally taken that step? Brock Purdy, consistent, high floor. Jackson Dart, exciting young player. Just hope he plays safer. And Bo Nix with Sean Payton. So I can't fault it. And when you're having all these quarterbacks come off, you know, well, you're either in or you're out. And with the teams you and I created, we were out.
Yeah, for sure. And you see, there's one, two, three, four. How many is it? Five? Is it five teams here in the first round that have that in the first two rounds that have two quarterbacks? Is that correct?
I'm showing six,
Six or six. So
half. Yep.
okay, so half of the league already has two quarterbacks in the first two rounds. When I see that, it's playing into my strategy.
Right.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
fade quarterback, and I know what's gonna happen now is you're gonna get tremendous values at the wide receiver, tight end, running back position. You know, I was able to get CeeDee Lamb with Jamar Chase, pairing those two. You know, I was absolutely happy about that in the third round pick that you'll go through. I mean, you already did. Omarion Hampton, I got him in the third round. So I think when you see quarterbacks go that high, that quick, you're going to get values like that. There's tremendous values in this third round. You know, Ashton Jetty, James Cook, Chase Brown, Hampton, four straight running backs. I mean, five straight. Kenneth Walker after that. That's if you started your team with two receivers or two running backs, whatever it is you started with, you're going to end up with a really good solid core in the first three rounds if you didn't take a quarterback in this specific draft, because we're talking about already six teams that have two, and most likely, and it did play out this way, most likely you're not going to see those teams take a quarterback till later on. So now you don't have to worry too much about not getting a quarterback as long as you don't wait too long, which I don't think I did, and I don't think you did either.
No, I mean, I think we worked the board pretty well. I'll cover round three here real quick. At 3-1, you got Devon Achan. 3-2, Janty. James Cook went at 3-3. Chase Brown at 3-4. Love the pick, Omarion. I was hoping he was going to fall to me. Omarion Hampton, you got him at 3-5. Kenneth Walker at 3-6. 3-7, I took the first tight end off the board. I feel like he's just going to be a monster this year, and I took Brock Bowers. And at this point, I'm like, there's no way Fantasy Pros can be faulting my team with Bijan, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Brock
Yeah,
Bowers.
yeah,
But I ended up with a middle of the road team statistically. At 3-8, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, it's redraft, 3-9, 3-10, Pat Mahomes. And Pat Mahomes probably should have went more. If we're gonna do all this quarterback picking, um, you know, maybe I guess I feel like he would deserve a spot in the second round. 3-11, Drake London, and then 3-12, Kyler Murray. You know, Team 12 got scared. They didn't have a quarterback, so they said, "I'm just going to take anybody." Um, and that would be when we talk about this being a good mock draft program. That's what somebody might do. They're going to be like, "Oh man,
yeah,
there's 15 quarterbacks off the board. I need something." So they're ignoring everything else. They get fixated on that and they forget that George Pickens and Malik Neighbors and Colston Loveland and Jeremiah Love are all still on the board. And they just say, I need a quarterback. And you see it time in and time again. And it just takes one or two teams to panic and follow the crowd, and you benefit from that. But no, I liked clearly your drafting strategy worked. You got the best score. I think I followed a similar strategy, and I was certainly happy with my team that you somewhat have to let the draft decide somewhat what you're going to pick. You
yeah,
know, you're not picking for need. At a certain point, you do, but in these first few rounds, you don't even know what your needs are.
yeah.
It'd be impossible to know what your needs are. So maybe that's the one thing I'm commenting on is that you see that Kyler Murray at 312. Yeah, I get it. You worry that you need a quarterback, but don't go and reach for them when that's what you're reaching for. Just so you're not left out in the cold, because that team, in theory, had a very good core. Puka and Jonathan Taylor to start it off, but then you followed up with a stinker like Kyler Murray when you could have picked Malik Neighbors or Colston Loveland or some of the players we're going to talk about in round 4.
Yeah, I mean that definitely was a reach for sure. I think there's multiple quarterbacks that could have even gone ahead of him there. But yeah, that's just one of them things that you got to watch out for in redrafts. You got to make sure that even if there's a run on a certain position and you feel like you're going to fall behind on that, you still got to take the best value, especially here in this situation. I mean, I'm going to go through the round right now. This team did pick AJ Brown the next pick, so that could have been a pick you got even before that. But he did get AJ Brown. But now 4-2 Trey McBride, Rashee Rice, George Pickens and Malik Neighbors. So you look at those players right there. Absolutely, you're taking every single one of them over Kyler Murray, no questions asked. So if this team here went with one of those receivers, say he goes with Rashee Rice, now you got Puka Nacua, Jonathan Taylor, Rashee Rice, AJ Brown. You're feeling really good about that, and you're not worried about the quarterback
Hmm.
too much because you could still get two decent quarterbacks on the next turnaround. In the fifth, sixth round turn, you're still going to end up with two quarterbacks if you really want to do that. So you always gotta make sure you're taking don't draft for needs so early on. It's just not what you want to do in any draft, dynasty or redraft. So and then Jeremiah Love was next there. That was your pick. So you're feeling pretty good right now with Bijan, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brock Bowers, Jeremiah Love. Yeah, obviously the injury to Jeremiah Love. Hopefully we see him get ramped up early on this season. It's a high ankle sprain. Those injuries are tricky, especially for running backs. So Tyler Algier is going to be someone that's going to be very important early on the season, I think, and he was going to have a role anyway. So definitely unfortunate to see that. And what was the reason he was out there so long? Do you know why? What he had
I
like he had like a workload he would have in a regular season game. Like I don't know what was going on there. Like he did
I
enough.
have no idea. I mean, I saw a handful of plays and I'm like, yeah, he's looking good.
Yeah,
He's looking real good here, but like, why do we care? And I guess this is, some coaching staffs. I get it. You want your guys to get some in-game practice and see what they can do. Um, but this is the real risk. Granted, Arizona, in some sense, unless he like were to blow out his knee or tear something, Arizona doesn't. I mean, realistically, do they care if they win games this year or not? I don't think so. It's nobody has a high predicted ceiling for them,
yeah,
and it would only be to their advantage. Not that I think they're doing this, but we didn't do too well this year. Well, oh, Jeremiah Love, we're just gonna keep him fresh and ride out Algier, and they end up with a top 3 pick. That maybe helps the franchise a little bit more. Um, but yeah,
yeah.
it did remind me though. I think I only have maybe one share of Jeremiah Love. The nonsense advice that I think I talked about this sometime in the past, where I see these experts saying, "Don't draft your own handcuffs. Draft somebody else's handcuffs." And
Yeah,
I and I remember thinking, I'm like, "Well, that's cool if, your player doesn't end up injured,
yeah,
but what happens if your player ends up injured?"
yeah, yeah,
Because then you want that player. Everybody wants the backup to the injured player, and there's no way of guessing whether it's going to be your own or someone else's.
yeah,
There's no way to guess, and the one team I have Jeremiah Love on, I got Tyler Algier. So I didn't panic as much.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
said, "Well, okay, I guess I'm glad I got him." Um, but that to me just felt like the most nonsense advice I've heard multiple times. But it just doesn't ring true. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense in my opinion.
yeah. Absolutely. I don't understand that logic. I mean, you want to have a starter. You know, if you
Yes.
if you can get other handcuffs too, that's fine. But I would not prioritize them over my own handcuff, especially if it's a handcuff as good as Tyler Algier is. He's already shown what he can do
Mhm.
in this league. When he gets its opportunity, he's a productive player. He can be a running back too. I'm not saying he will be with the Arizona Cardinals, but he has been before, and he can be certain weeks. So, yeah, if you're a Jeremiah Love manager, you need to get Algier. There's no question about it, especially now, especially now. But
Yeah,
so
yep.
yeah,
Price is higher now.
yeah, the price is higher, absolutely. And we'll talk about price being higher on the other players too, due to some injuries this preseason, unfortunately. But all right, so finish out this round here. Colson Loveland was 4.7. Nico Collins 4.8. 4.9 was Zay Flowers. Mario Star would love that pick there. 410, Josh Jacobs. 411, Devonta Smith. And then really good value here at the end of round 412, Chris Olave. Yeah, that I like the end of that round. You know, with Colson Loveland there in the middle, that's about where you'll see him go. But look at those receivers: Nico Collins, Zay Flowers, Devonta Smith, Chris Olave. All of them number one targets on their team. And unfortunately, we will have to talk about why Chris Olave's stock is even higher now, and it's for a reason that we didn't want to have to talk about. Man, Jordan Tyson. That's an unfortunate one. Um,
Yeah,
we
it's
we
the
knew the risk.
same reason.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
We knew the risk about Jordan Tyson heading into NFL. Top 10 draft pick. Obviously, his talent is off the charts. They were willing to take him that high. But yeah, it's to see that injury happen and to know that it's the same type of injury he's been dealing with in college and early on in his NFL career so far. 2 months, man, it's not going to be out of the realm of possibility that we don't see him play this year because you look at it. He's a top 10 pick. They're not going to push him. They're not going to push him because they need him. He's such an important part to their future. But man, what do you think? That's a tough one. That is really is tough because it's the hamstring. That's why it's hard.
I think if there's one actionable move to this, it's that the clear winner of that type of injury is Juwan Johnson. No, I'm only I'm
Yeah.
joking about that, but I mean, there's some truth to that.
No, there is. Yeah, absolutely.
It's Chris Olave, Juwan Johnson, and I guess whoever is the third string wide receiver in New Orleans, maybe a little bit more ETN, maybe a little bit more um, you know, uh, God,
Um,
all of a sudden you're not an RB1 and I'm forgetting your name, Alvin Kamara. Maybe it's a little bit more Kamara.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, it's what have you done for me lately in this league? But um, from a very promising team, and NFL dynasty redraft fans have short memories. Wasn't that long ago that we were talking about one more bad hit and Chris Olave's
yeah,
career is over. Um,
exactly.
and I'm not saying I'm foreshadowing anything. No, no, not at all. But when you lose Jordan Tyson, he's having injuries. And then all of a sudden, the cards all fall the right way, and Chris Olave comes back and he has everybody forgetting about a history of concussions. And then what if something like were to happen again? All of a sudden that team has very few weapons. Um, but yeah, if there's any actual move, at least in the short term, other starting positional players they get a little bit of a bump. And Kellen Moore is a good coach, so they didn't have Jordan Tyson last year, so you can't say like, oh, they can't do without him. But this is not the way you want to start your season, and certainly as a dynasty player, not when you saw what might happen and you chose to just focus on the talent, and then this happens. That's I guess then it becomes a window to buy Jordan Tyson, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is a
I
window. It
I'd
is a
I'd be
yeah.
looking to buy him.
Yeah, it
I'd
definitely
be
is a
looking
window.
to buy him.
Yeah, because if you do
Yeah,
have him, you always knew this risk was there, and but you're like you said, you're willing to take that chance because the talent's off the charts. So when this happens before the season, before you even get a chance to see him play, it's a downer. It really is. And then so this is the time, like you said, this is the time to send offers for Jordan Tyson. Because
it was.
you're not gonna get him any cheaper unless he's doesn't play at all and then next year he struggles with it too. But let's just hope for the best. Hopefully, it is only 2 months and he will play this year. I would love to see him out there.
Definitely, definitely. We'll hit up round 5 here. Round 5 at 5-1. You got another injury bug guy. You got Emeka Egbuka with the turf toe. Kyron Williams at 5-2. Garrett Wilson at 5-3. Ted McMillan at 5-4. Man, a lot of good good wide receiver ones for their team. You got Jared Goff, just habitually underrated Jared Goff. That's who I would have picked in this round. You got him. Good job. Um, at 5-6, Jalen Waddle. 5-7, I got Lad McConkey. 5'8", T. Higgins, Luther Burden at 5'9", 5'10", Mike Evans, Javonte Williams at 5'11", and Sam Darnold at 5'12". That 12th team. Now they've reached for quarterbacks twice now, and they're reaching and they're grabbing Sam Darnold and Kyler Murray when there's a lot of other good options here. Only player that, you and I, we primarily and only really do Dynasty. When I saw this round and all of a sudden I saw Luther Burden pop up here, I was like, yeah, he's an exciting Dynasty prospect, but does he really fit in the fifth round of a redraft league? Um, Certainly not when we know about the groin injury. I mean, now you have to kind of almost prioritize. I'll take the not injured players. I'll take Odunze. Um, I also don't think Mike Evans is Mike Evans really a round 5 redraft wide receiver. When I look at the talent that's available in just list the next round. You could have went tight end at Tyler Warren, Quinshon Judkins, Brees Hall, ETN. You could have gotten a better quarterback, Jordan Love, Cam Scattaboo, Terry McLaurin, Travion Henderson, Tucker Kraft. No, I just think that's probably was just a bad pick. What do you think about this round?
Yeah, I think obviously Sam Darnold, there's other options there. There just is. I think Luther Burden and Mike Evans, I think when it comes to them, you just kind of look at the receivers that are still available, and there's some pretty good ones still available. So I think the hype with Luther Burden is still there. I don't think there's too much concern of him being available in week 1. So I think I'm still okay with him being in the 5th, 6th round range. Mike Evans, I think he's a guy that is always going to be in the discussion to be, weekly wide receiver 2 type player as long as he's on the field, as long as he's healthy. So when you're drafting this range, you're looking for floor, and I think you can get a decent floor with Mike Evans. But yeah, I think there are other players that would have been probably better, upside and a little more safe at that pick.
All right, that's fair. Well, what's going on in round 6? I already foreshadowed some of it.
Yeah. So did you read off to Tyler Shuck? Is that where you got to?
I was skipping some players in between, so maybe if you just want to start from
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
start of round 6.
That's good to start around 6. So start around 6 was, yeah, we just mentioned Sam Darnold, and then Javonte Williams, Mike Evans, Luther Burden, and then
Oh, no, the round 6, Tyler Warren.
oh,
That was the
sorry
round
about
we just
that.
covered. That was
Sorry.
round 5.
I'm going backwards. Sorry about that. Okay. Round 6, it's Tyler Warren, Baker Mayfield, Quinshon Judkins. 6'4" is Brees Hall. 6'5" is Travis Etienne. And then 6'6", Jordan Love, and then Tyler Shuck at 6'7". Cam Scatterbo, Travion Henderson. And then to round off round 6 here, we have Terry McLaurin, Tucker Kraft, and then Bucky Irving. I don't really think there's anything. I don't really think there's anything too crazy, honestly, in this round. I think a lot of the players that you're seeing here in round 6, that's about where they're going. Tucker Kraft is a nice value here at tight end, but I did hear that he may not be at a full snap share, early on in the season. It might take him till midway. Did you hear that? He might be on a snap
Uh,
count to start the season.
I haven't seen that, but I mean, it would only make sense.
Yeah, so obviously the upside's still there. It doesn't take a whole lot for him to have a good game anyway, but I think you might have you might have to temper some expectations a little early on with Tucker Kraft in the beginning of the year. But yeah, I think Terry McLaurin with Stephon Diggs there, I think he might be bumped down a little more as we get closer to the season. Travion Henderson, I thought was a really good value. Cam Scatterbo was decent value as well. But yeah, nothing outrageous in this round. But I think we will see some pretty good ones. I want to foreshadow a little, but round 7, if you want to cover that, I think there's some good values here.
100%. And what you said about round 6, that it's a lot of good players. So I think that tells us that the round made sense. That when you have all this
Yeah,
talent falling, there wasn't anything that stood out as, oh man, that's a great value, or what, that was somebody overdrafted a player. In round 7, at 7-1, you got Devontae Adams, 7-2, DJ Moore, 7-3, Rome Odunze. 7-4, you got Jamison Williams. 7-5, Harold Fannin Jr. And this is not a tight end premium league. 7-6, Christian Watson. 7-7, you got C.J. Stroud, Carnell Tate at 7-8. 7-9, Swift. 7-10, Michael Wilson, Parker Washington at 7-11, and 7-12, Cortland Sutton. I mean, not a whole lot stands out for me in this league. I mean, I just know I'm excited to see how well DJ Moore and Josh Allen meshed this year. Is this really the year that it kind of comes together for Roma Dunze with, Burns' groin injury? It's year 3, it's the breakout. Is Christian Watson for real? Or is Jordan Tyson just a young Christian Watson clone? I don't know. Um, and of course, Michael Wilson, is he the real deal in Arizona, or is Marvin Harrison Jr.? We're not going to spend any more time on him. We cover him almost every other week. Um, who's going to be the real deal in Arizona? And I guess the question is how long until Jacoby Brissett is, they say, oh, we got to take a look at Beck instead. But that's all I would say in this round. I mean, nothing felt to me out of place. Just certain players I wouldn't be taking a shot on with what I feel like is more certain upside with other players. Like I wouldn't bother with Michael Wilson or Parker Washington. Players that there's too much, other target competition, and they're not the clear one or even the clear two on a high end offense. Those are the two players in this round that stand out from Adams, Moore, Odunze, Williams, Christian Watson, Carnell Tate, Cortland Sutton. All those guys are, or you could argue are the wide receiver one, or in Jameson's case, a high end wide receiver two on a very good offense.
Yeah, I think in this round, if you did not really draft wide receiver early on, the higher tier, I think you'd still be okay getting one of these guys or your wide receiver two, like a Roma Dunze or Jamison Williams, high upside type players there. Christian Watson, obviously, you got to see him stay healthy. We haven't seen that yet, for a full season, really. But if he can, we know there's a chance that he could be a pretty good player there for a redraft wide receiver two type player. Man, I was not impressed by the. I don't know if we were expected to be impressed or not, but the Titans did not look good, man. And I don't know, Cam Ward didn't play well. Carnell Tate
Mm-hmm.
wasn't really separating too much. I don't know. I know it's only preseason. It's just, I mean, it's not something we should overreact to. But we want to see something to feel comfortable with. So I don't know. That was not promising. But there's still a couple weeks to go here before the season, so hopefully they can get in a rhythm. Because Carnell Tate could be really good. He could be really good value here in drafts, but we got to see Cam Ward and we got to see his offense play a lot better than they did this past week.
And I think it's a good reminder. We've said it before. The rookies are exciting. We're focused on. We've seen their college tape, but when it comes to competing the next year, you can't have an over reliance on the rookies. I got all these first round picks, and now I put them in my lineup, and now it's just sit back and win games. No, that type of stuff can happen. Oh,
Yep.
okay. Well, Cam Ward doesn't take the next step, and that kind of hamstrings Carnell Tate's value. And it's going to take another couple of years till they work this out, or we get another QB change or another offensive system. Don't expect immediate, Justin Jefferson type rookie years from everybody, or Jamar Chase. That's why they're special players. And it's a good reminder, maybe don't overvalue future first round picks. They're nice to have, but they're not guaranteed superstars, or you're not going to be able to predict when they become a star.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is definitely a reminder. It's always good to have a mixture of obviously young talent, but you also want to have the productive veterans and also those players that are entering their prime. You got to have a mixture of both, because if you're just one way, then you're banking on a lot of the young guys hitting, and the hit rates on rookies, especially depending on where you got them in the rookie draft, not necessarily the highest, especially if it's like mid late first round. And then when you get into the second round, it just drops even more. So yeah, I mean, you got your rare talents, coming into the league. Ashton Genties, Jeremiah Loves. He looks like he could be a legit talent. Bijan Robinson, Chase when he entered the league. You have those players, but those are few and far between. And you can't just expect that anyone that you draft in the first round to turn into an absolute elite player. You would hope for it, but you can't bank on it. You just can't. But yeah, I agree with that. So now let's enter round 8. And there's some unexciting players in this round, I will say, but there's also some players that are pretty good values, I think. DK Metcalf, 8-1. David Montgomery, I think he's interesting. Kind of just ho hum this whole offseason. I think not a whole lot of talk about him, but that's not a bad thing. It seems like he's pretty much locked into that role, and I think with that team having a strong defense, he might get a good amount of carries this year and be able to produce at an RB2 rate. It's definitely still a good player. So we'll see what happens there. Wandell Robinson. I mean, we just mentioned Cam Ward struggling, but who knows? Maybe that's a benefit for Wandell Robinson. Maybe just the easier targets will, be in play for him. Marvin Harrison going after Michael Wilson in this draft. Um, I think we'll see them be very close as we get to the end of this preseason. They'll be very close in drafts. I wouldn't be surprised to see Michael Wilson leapfrog Marvin Harrison just because, I think you're seeing a potential for these guys to really be 1A, 1B. But Marvin Harrison did score a touchdown, and hopefully he can continue to play well. BTJ goes at pick 4, 8-5. 8-6 was Bashaw Tootin. 8-7 was Chris Godwin. And then Malik Willis at 8-8. That was my second quarterback. I didn't feel amazing about it, but in redraft, with the running ability, it's still potential, to put up some decent numbers. They're going to be a terrible football team. But if he can, obviously if he can produce anything at all through the air, which is going to be tough, but if he can, he could still be a decent super flex guy to have. And then to round out this round, obviously, if this draft took place a few days later, you wouldn't have this pick, but Jordan Tyson was picked there. Mekhi Lemon, Jadarian Price, and then the last pick here, 8-12, was Jalen Warren. I think overall, when I look at this round, I see some decent running backs that you can still plug into your flex spot. Jalen Warren, Jadarian Price, those guys you can plug in. Bashaw Tootin as well, potential RB2 type player. But then, obviously, with the BTJ, Marvin Harrison, those guys, if they rebound, outstanding values. But we don't need to go through that again. We've talked about it all off season. They got to step it up. That's what it comes down to. This is a huge season, more so for Marvin. I think BTJ it's a very important season as well for him. But Marvin Harrison, this is a huge season for him. So yeah, overall, I think obviously with Jordan Tyson being injured and Mekhi Lemon being banged up right now as well with the hamstring, I think you're gonna have to be patient, especially with Mekhi Lemon right now. Jordan Tyson, you're not drafting him at this point in the 8th round. If you're starting to draft now, he's going to be more late round flyer at this point because we don't even know when he'll play. But yeah, overall, some decent values here, but nothing that I would be going crazy over. But still, guys that if they do bounce back can be really good values here in round 8.
Yeah, it's certainly it's a certainly change in the gears when you go from dynasty and you don't necessarily overly worry about, oh, okay, they're going to be out for this amount of time or that amount of time, and they're coming off of an injury because you're looking at the bigger picture. But boy, is that amplified in redraft. That Jordan Tyson goes from being, 4th, 5th round guy in a startup to in a redraft league. Like there, it would be tough to justify picking him even in the top 15
Yep.
rounds.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you can't. So I guess that's probably the biggest thing. Just be aware of who's injured, because you don't want to start the ground, already behind the 8 ball, and you've picked these players, and you're hoping everything falls right because in week 6, well, then my team's really going to pick it up. What is the one thing the NFL teaches us? It's difficult to predict. But round 9. It starts off a little boring here. We got Tony Pollard and Ramondre Stevenson. So the newest article, because I picked up another share in a startup I'm doing of Travion Henderson. Man, he's got a hit this year. I think I have like of all my teams, which is now 11. I think I have like nearly like a 70% share of Travion Henderson. So I'm gonna sink sink or swim on that ship. But the article said that, well, they're predicting it's going to be a 50-50 split. And I was like, oh, well, I don't even know why this is news. That to me, that felt like exactly kind of what I was expecting. That, Ramondre's a little bit older. And if they're going to be bumping Travion Henderson into a 50% role, to me, that feels sufficient. And I wasn't expecting him to be getting starter carries, especially when there's this talk that he's not. He's not giving them what they need in pass protection, which is really something he's going to need to work on because how are you supposed to be on the field protecting Drake May if they can't feel confident? You don't want to just get kind of pigeonholed into like a Shane Vereen role. You're a third down back in New England. He just seems too talented for that. Um, but at 9-3, we have Stephon Diggs. That to me felt like one of the more exciting picks. I don't know. I mean, it's hard when you have the veterans that just keep producing to imagine the time that they're not going to produce. Derrick Henry, Matthew Stafford, Stephon Diggs. Eventually, it's going to happen. Happened to Peyton Manning. Happened to Aaron Rodgers. All these guys that are these superstar Hall of Fame players. Eventually, it happens. But Stephon Diggs definitely set up to succeed in Washington this year. Alec Pierce, is he really a wide receiver one? No, I don't think he is. I think that's a joke. He can't truly be. I mean, I think maybe he can be a solid part of that football team. Is he going to get 1,000 yards? He did it last year. But they're not going to. I wouldn't think they're going to use him a whole lot different. It'll be exciting to see. Jonathan Brooks, that was one game this weekend I was excited to watch, and boy, was that underwhelming. I think he had 3 carries for 5 yards. Um, at, at 9-6, I got Bryce Young, Josh Downs at 9-7. So just going a couple of picks after Alec Pierce. So that tells us this program isn't sure who's really going to be the number one target earner outside of they think it's going to be Tyler Warren, which seems probable to me. Let's see, what would that be here? I think that would be at 9-8, you got QJ, 9-9, Michael Pittman, 9-10, DeJon Stribling, the beneficiary of the Ricky Pearsall injury. At 9-11, you would have Chuba, and that's interesting. They have Jonathan Brooks going before Chuba, which feels like maybe most people are kind of leaning that way, but that to me feels like, there's if you're willing to take the risk, to assume Jonathan Brooks, who hasn't really done anything in the NFL, and Chuba, who has, Chuba might be the better value, but could certainly see it flipping the other way. And then at 9-12 to finish out the round, you got Sam Laporta. So maybe that's, it's, as we go on, the players get less exciting, so it becomes less consequential. But getting Sam Laporta in the 9th round, that to me doesn't seem like a bad value. But also, where is the ceiling with Sam Laporta?
Yeah, I think that's a good value there as well. So let's just hop into round 10. Blake Corum was the first pick of round 10. Jacoby Myers, 10-2. JCM went 10-3. RJ Harvey, 10-4. Yeah, we know he's got the chance to possibly, I don't know. RJ Harvey is one of them guys. We've talked about him all off season. I don't know, man. I don't really know what to think right now. I think they really like Jonah Coleman, and obviously if J.K. Dobbins is healthy, he's going to be getting the bulk of the carries. So that's tough. That's a tough one. Rico Dowdle, 10-5. Daniel Jones went 10-6 to you. You got your third quarterback there. Rashad White, 10-7. Kenny Gainwell. I will say, honestly, I think this was probably my favorite pick of the draft. Getting Kenny Gainwell here at 10-8. I just think he is a type of player in PPR. I think you can rely on him to be a guy that you can just plug in as a flex, and he's going to be pretty consistent. I think they plan to have a pretty good role for Kenny Gainwell. And you get him in the 10th round. We're getting later in this draft, so you're not going to find too many guys that you would be able to plug in and feel confident with. So yeah, I think Kenny Gainwell's a decent pick there. J.K. Dobbins goes after R.J. Harvey. Um, they're a 10-9. 10-10, Kyle guy. He did go down with a injury in training camp, but doesn't seem too serious. So hopefully he will be ready for week one. Jordan Addison, 10-11, which I do like that value there. And then the round out, round 10-12, Matthew Golden. And yeah, I think in this round, I think I see some like I said, Jordan Addison. I do like that value there in round. Now that Kyler Murray's been announced a starter, that's in the rearview mirror now. We all knew that was going to be the case, but now it's just kind of just getting that announced, and now everyone knows for sure that it's going to be Kyler. I think Jordan Addison is a good value there at the end here, round 10. I think that's the one that pops out the most to me, and also J.K. Dobbins going after R.J. Harvey. I don't think you should do that. I think J.K. should go a little before him. But it'll be interesting to see how that Denver backfield shakes out. They got 3 running backs that they're going to use all of them. But I really do think they'll lean towards J.K. and also Jonah Coleman a little more than people may have expected originally.
It's good that the games are almost here.
Yeah.
Not for the injury reasons, but we put a lot of these questions to rest. But once again, good programming by the developers here. Where you got JCM, and then a little bit after you got Rashad White, you got RJ Harvey, you got J.K. Dobbins. They don't know. That just tells you they don't know who's going to be the lead back in those backfields. So it's interesting to see that, but it's nice that you're that high on Kenny Gainwell. I mean, all he has to do is, I guess, somehow beat out Bucky Irving, or they, use him more like they did in Pittsburgh last year. Um,
Yeah,
it's
I don't think
we
it's
we could see
really.
he could play.
Yeah, I don't really think it's a matter of beating out Bucky Irving. Irving has his role. I think it's a matter of the fact that they will use him in the passing game similarly to what Pittsburgh used him. I think that's why they brought him in, to have that kind of weapon in the backfield, and he's going to get some carries. So if you look at Kenny Gainwell, I think he had 70 catches last year around that. So if he gets in the 60 catch range, which is not impossible, and then he gets, maybe he gets 100 carries, that's a guy that you can use in your flex, especially 60 catches for Kenny Gainwell, and then the opportunity to score some touchdowns a couple weeks here and there. I think that's a guy that you can use. And I think in the 10th round, he's going to have a role in this offense. And I talked about it before. They brought him in here to have a role, not to be the starter over Bucky Irvin, but he's going to be on the field a ton. And I think he's going to be more of a thorn in the side for Bucky Irvin managers than I think they would have maybe thought early in the offseason. I think Kenny Gainwell has a role for sure.
All right, well, we'll have to wait and see. Round 11 starts out boring, just like round 9 did. Aaron Jones, you got the tight end 2 overall last year, Kyle Pitts. Dylan Sampson, Jaden Reed, um, at 9-5, or excuse me, 11-5, you got Cam Ward. And 11-6, Travis Kelce. 11-7, Jordan Mason. 11-8, Xavier Worthy. 11-9, Debo Samuel. Man, that's a odd pick for the computer. I think that's a computer pick. Hope that wouldn't be someone. Nope. Good. That was a computer pick. That wouldn't be justified. Uh, at 11-10, you got Romeo Dubs. That's somebody I would be giving a thumbs up to. I feel like he is just criminally undervalued in New England, and just so much cheaper than you're going to be able to get anyone else for. You're not going to be able to get AJ Brown at that price, and I feel like, statistically, I mean, I don't know. I guess if he plays in the slot, stays healthy, I think it could be a nice return on this investment. Certainly in the 11th round. 11-11, you got Zach Charbonnet. And I don't know if you've heard anything more about his injury. I really haven't either. It's just kind of this wishy-washy. Well, we hope he's ready for week 1.
Yeah.
And then 11-12, we got Chris Rodriguez. Certainly, at least all the camp talk and the coach talk. Bashal Tootin he could certainly be a great return on investment in the 8th round. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. Chris Rodriguez, maybe a bit of a similar situation for Tootin and Rodriguez as it is for Gainwell and Bucky.
Yeah.
That you're not really certain kind of what the split's going to be. They have different skill sets, but they brought that third down change of pace back in for a reason. So it'll be exciting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. So now we get to round 12. Now we're in the range here where we're looking at backup tight ends getting drafted, third quarterbacks, and handcuff type running backs. That's what we're looking at here. So round 12, the first pick, Tyron Tracy, and then Woody Marks. Then it goes Dalton Kincaid, Dallas Goddard, George Kittle, and Isaiah Likely. 12-7, Carson Beck. Then 12-8 is Tyler Algier. And then Jake Ferguson, Juwan Johnson, we mentioned him earlier. So now a 12th round pick. I think that's not bad. I think that's not bad for him. He should see a healthy amount of targets, similar to what he did last year. Jaden Higgins. I really do like that pick here towards the end of round 12, 12-11. And then the last pick, Mark Andrews, 12-12. Well, let's talk about Jaden Higgins for a second. I did hear, obviously, it's his teammate, so obviously you're not going to hear his teammate talk trash on him. But Nico Collins did give him a really good compliment, man. He said, he could see Jaden Higgins being, the face of the organization, a cornerstone type player for this team, in as little as a year. I think he sees the talent, the size he has, the ability he has, the college production. I think Jaden Higgins is a very interesting player. I really think he is, and it's one of those players here late in the draft. Throw a flyer out there on him, and you never know. And he did show some decent things last year as well. So yeah, it was cool to hear Nico Collins give him that credit there and just kind of talk him up there. And obviously he's learning. Jaden Higgins gets to learn from a guy like Nico Collins. That's a great thing for him. So yeah, I think that'll be. I know you have him on a couple teams, and I think that's a player that I think will. He's got an opportunity here to really do some good things. And dynasty wise, that's a player to watch.
Yeah, certainly in the dynasty world or in some of the startups, people just kind of seem to forget about him because he's not a rookie this year, and they didn't put up any flashy numbers last year, and he wasn't even a first round pick. I mean, I think he was like the first pick of the second round last year. So, and then we saw kind of Houston, their offensive struggles, and then CJ Stroud has fallen down the board. So some of the shimmer of the Jaden Higgins stock, but all those core pieces are still there. Is CJ Stroud really as bad as they looked last year? I don't think so. And is Nico Collins a guy that's rock solid, healthy, he's playing every game of his career? No. And is Jaden Higgins, does he have decent draft capital? Decent size for the NFL? Any other real significant target competition other than Nico Collins? No. So I mean, I think there's a lot of good flags, a lot of green flags to look for and to see with Jaden Higgins, and he felt like somewhat of a discount this year. But I don't put a whole lot of stock into Nico Collins saying nice things about him. You can say nice things about anybody. It doesn't have to be true. Yeah. But if Nico were to get hurt, Jaden Higgins would, and he also seems like he's the future. And
Yeah.
that once again, this is redraft. So, I felt like when I was at this point of the draft, I was like, well, okay, I already got my third quarterback, and I'm going to secure my, was it my second tight end at that point? Yeah, my second tight end. Because I figured once I get these backups, these are less starters out of on other people's teams. And that was really my strategy at this point. And then the final few rounds, these players statistically don't hit at a very high level. So I figured it was good to either you get somebody is going to be decent depth, or you're taking, the term late round flyer. You just take somebody and you hope that there's a return on investment somehow, some way. But we'll talk about that in a moment when we get to round 13. Which started off with Travis Hunter. To me, it feels like that's the type of player you take at this part of the draft. There's not a clear role for them, but you see a ceiling, you see maybe a situation. I don't mind that as a 13th round pick. At 13-2, you got Jalen Coker at 13-3. This I don't know if that's the computer. They followed that other fantasy analyst advice. They took my handcuff and they got Brian Robinson. Yeah, it doesn't, I get taking a decent handcuff. I think you said it best. If the handcuff is good, take them. But whether it's your own or it's someone else's, there's no way to predict injury. Keaton Mitchell, I think we could have done better here at 13-4. 13-5, KC Concepcion. Like that to me is the perfect 13th round pick right there. I like that pick a lot. 13-6, you got Jonah Coleman. 13-7, Khalil Shakir. 13-8, Alvin Kamara. Injury to ETN. It wouldn't be too bad for Kamara. At 13-9, Tajay Spears. 13-10, you got Isaiah Pacheco. 13-11, Aaron Rodgers and Fernando Mendoza rounds out round 13. I don't mind those. It depends kind of if those are their third quarterback, you might as well take them on your team. It's less players on the waiver wire for someone else, and you get those buys covered. Um, but I guess it's redraft, and there's a lot more streaming of players depending on how deep your benches are in redraft. But yeah, no, I don't know if there's a whole lot of interesting things here, but these later rounds just kind of shoot for the moon, hope for an injury. Isaiah Pacheco, Alvin Kamara, Jonah Coleman, KC Concepcion, Travis Hunter. Those are the type of players I think you should be targeting at this point of the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Fernando Mendoza there at the end of the draft. The team that drafted him already has two starters, so it kind of makes sense in that way. He could be a guy that you have on your bench, and gives you some flexibility there. So let's get to round 14. Again, we're really, really deep in this draft, so obviously you're not gonna find tremendous players to build your team around or anything, obviously, but you got to look for guys with upside. So obviously here we got 14-1 Tank Bisbee, and then we got Jerry Judy, Emmett Johnson at 14-4 Rondé Gadsden. That's a good pick there. 14-5 Marshawn Lloyd, 14-6 Denzel Boston, 14-7 Rashid Shaheed, 14-8 is Chig Okonkwo, 14-9 with James Conner, 14-10 Bretton Strange, 14-11 Braylon Allen. That's one of those guys you can take late. And obviously Brees Hall's injury nags into the season. He could be a guy that gets some work early on. And then to round out round 14 is Hunter Henry. So yeah, we don't see a lot of guys here that are gonna possibly be big time players, but there are some decent players here. Denzel Boston kind of in the KC Concepcion category there as far as a late round flyer with upside. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot here. I don't know what you think, but yeah, I think Braylon Allen, again, like I mentioned, he could be a guy that you could stash and just see what happens. It's just not a great offense, so it's not super exciting. But we're in round 14. We're not really getting guys that are too exciting anyway.
Oh no, I mean it's all if you're shooting for the moon, go with the handcuffs. Go with these guys that at least have a defined role or the upside. You got Braylon Allen, Marshawn Lloyd. I like both of those players. Chig Okonkwo, that's a good player. Denzel Boston. I'm happy with all those players. Even Tank Bigsby, he showed out pretty well last year in limited opportunities that he could be the guy if given the chance. But all right, round 15. This is to close it out. Should be the least exciting round, but we'll try to pick at least one player we think that people made a good choice on. You got a 15-1. You got Tank Dell. It's exciting to see him back on the field, where some were questioning whether his career was over. Jacoby Brissett, he's the only quarterback that goes in this round. Calvin Ridley, the forgotten man in Tennessee, is at 15-3. 15-4, TJ Hawkinson. Maybe that feels to me like almost one of the best values here. Is Kyler going to naturally target TJ Hawkinson maybe at a rate that he did with Trey McBride? I think I saw something where they said like his deep ball completion rate is like, it was like 30th in the league or something. He's not good at throwing the deep ball. So to me, it feels like maybe that's not good for Jordan Addison, but it's decent for TJ Hawkinson. At 15.5, Omar Cooper. 15.6, got Jalen Naylor. 15.7, Trey Tucker. Somebody that was the question of somebody's got to catch passes in Las Vegas. We're
Yeah.
going to just take them both back to back. 15.8, David Njoku. I saw comments talking today how Oronde Gadsden is maybe in the doghouse, and it's actually the 1 year signing of David Njoku that he's going to be the starter with the Chargers. And we've seen what Mike McDaniel can do with
Yeah.
the tight ends and Jonnu Smith, um, and it's hard to argue that David Njoku isn't more accomplished, but it did seem so promising for Oronde Gadsden. But I'm not willing to, you can't make a ton out on, preseason game one. 15.9, got Jawan Jennings. 15.10, Kenyon Sadiq. Kamani Vidal. 15.11, that'd be almost like sort of a wasted pick. I don't know. I mean, but I guess maybe they're going for the handcuffs if that's who you think the handcuff is. But then Keaton Mitchell already went, so you don't need the third string back. And that final pick of the draft, Jalen McMillan, Kenyon Sadiq, David Njoku, T.J. Hawkinson. I guess I like all those players, and Jalen Naylor and Trey Tucker.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
I think all of those have upside in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, those are the guys I actually was thinking about, the same exact players, the tight ends, and then the two Raiders receivers. I think those guys could potentially be guys that you can have on your roster and potentially plug in, bye weeks and things like that. Those types of players are important for your roster because you're going to need to have depth if you want to win a fantasy championship. The one thing I will say is, if you can, just wait to do your draft to as long as possible, because we just read off a bunch of players here that are now injured and their draft stock is dropping. Try to wait as long as you can to do the draft, because how many times do we see it? You draft a team, you feel great about it, and then you have an injury and it just completely destroys the complexion of your team. And it's not dynasty. You're not going to be able to you're not going to be able to make that up. It's really hard. You got a guy that's hurt on your roster in redraft, they have no value. And dynasty is a little different. You're going to be able to still possibly trade a player who did go down with injury if they have talent and have value, but not in redraft. So I don't know about you, Tecmo, but if you're doing a draft that's just for this season, wait as long as you possibly can, because you are going to regret it if you do a draft now.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing a league where you're putting up money, it's not about planning, it's not about knowledge, it's not about strategy. So much of the game is just luck. Like, oh, if you picked Brees Hall, it doesn't mean you did anything wrong, or Luther Burden, or Jeremiah Love, or Jordan Tyson. You didn't choose wrong. I mean, some could make the argument maybe you chose wrong with Jordan Tyson, but I think the point still stands. Yeah, if you're investing some money this year, um, while it may be harder to wait and injuries are part of the game, you don't want the game to be over before it starts.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, because you only got this year. Um, but yeah, no, it's I think we've hit our about our hour here, I think. I'm not sure if I see the timer. There it is. Yeah, just a little bit over an hour, but it's been a good show. It was fun doing that mock draft. We went from not sharing dynasty advice this week, but we're going to share some redraft insight. But I want to thank everybody for listening. So while I was wrong last week, I think I'm right this week. We're going to do a preseason preview, another preseason preview for leagues that we are aware of or leagues that we participate in. And do you think we should do the Lab 52?
Yeah.
Do Lab 52 next week?
Yeah, let's do it. Lab 52. We could do that
All
next week.
right.
Yeah.
We'll do our namesake league, listener league. So hopefully we'll get a lot of views, a lot of reviews, a lot of comments, a lot of subscriptions and follows. But if you just happen to be listening to the show, thank you for doing that. I'll let you close it out, and we'll see you next week for the Lab 52 preseason preview show.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is fun doing the mock draft and kind of reviewing it and just talking about these players. We're getting so close. We're August middle of August right now. Just a few weeks away. We're going to be watching some NFL regular season action, and it's going to be great. The off season is it's long, but it's one of them things where there's always something happening in the off season. So we've talked about player values all off season. Some have dropped, some have gone up. Now that we're right here in the thick of it, few weeks away, it's getting exciting. So yeah, looking forward to the show next week to review the Lab 52 Dynasty League. That'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, again, everyone, we always appreciate you listening, and we hope you have a great week.